Yoshi's Island. Released worldwide in 1995 on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, it spent 4 years in development and was marketed as the sequel to the critically acclaimed Super Mario World. Despite receiving excellent reviews at launch and a re-release on the Game Boy Advance, as well as virtual console releases on both the Wii U and the Switch, I frequently see Yoshi's Island excluded entirely from people's rankings and discussions of their favourite Super Mario games. And this is an injustice as far as I'm concerned. Yoshi's Island is by far one of the most creative, beautiful and unique entries in the franchise, and it deserves the same level of praise and attention as the rest of the series, if not more. Perhaps the most initially striking thing that sets Yoshi's Island apart from the Mario titles that came before it, and after it, is its unique art style. The first 3 Super Mario Bros. Games had released on the NES, and as such were comparatively basic, but by the third game, an undeniable Mario aesthetic had been established. And with Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo, this art style was brought into the 16-bit era with wider ranges of colours, more detailed sprites, and generally much more going on screen. Yoshi's Island took this idea and ran with it, going much further than Super Mario World before it. Donkey Kong Country was released on the Super Nintendo during the development of the game, and it was one of, if not the first, to use pre-rendered 3D models converted into 2D sprites. This style proved to be hugely successful, and Nintendo's marketing team reportedly approached Shigeru Miyamoto, the producer on the game, to use the same technology for his next project. Miyamoto rejected this, and instead opted to use a hand-drawn style, with artists Shigefumi Hino, Yoshiaki Koizumi, and Hisashi Nagami hand-drawing the designs, scanning them, and then reproducing the art pixel by pixel. According to Nagami himself, this was a time-consuming task, but I think the results speak for themselves. Over 26 years after its original release, Yoshi's Island still looks beautiful to this day. The sheer amount of care and effort that went into the art for this game is astounding. In Mario Bros. 1, 2, 3, and World, a fairly standard tile set was used, and aside from general world theming, there wasn't an enormous amount of variety in terms of the visuals. Yoshi's Island sets itself apart here, as there are many bespoke backgrounds, enemies, and animations that are literally used once or twice across the entire game, which really adds to the variety of the experience. As one of the later Super Nintendo releases, the game makes full use of the system's capabilities, in particular the Super Effects chip, which enables some elements in the game to appear 3D. From butterflies in the foreground, to giant crushing doors that fold outwards towards the player. In addition to these 3D effects, sprite scaling, stretching and rotating is seen in some of the boss encounters. This is one of the final first-party entries on the system, and it just shows how well Nintendo really knew how to make the most of their hardware at this point. It's one of the most vibrant and iconic games on the system in terms of art direction. Every level is jam-packed with lively animations, with detailed background layers using parallax scrolling to give a player a great sense of scale and place, with minuscule details overlaid in the foregrounds like the aforementioned butterflies. No other Mario game has come close to capturing the wonderful level of atmosphere seen here. In the gameplay department, it's clear that Yoshi's Island was a deviation from the standard Mario formula in several major ways. For starters, you don't even play as Mario. Sure, he's present, but for the most part he's literally a helpless baby that fell from the sky. Instead, you play as a colourful cast of different Yoshis, which use a relay system to pass Mario from stage to stage, in order to reunite him with his brother Luigi. That's right, there's no kidnapped princesses here in sight. This is a story about brotherly love, and the kindness and logistical genius of a series of colourful lizards. The simplest change, though perhaps one of the most crucial in terms of how it shaped the design of the game, is the removal of the timer. Mario games have always been popular with speedrunners, and it's easy to see why. You can reach your top speed in a matter of seconds, and a skilled player can maintain this top speed throughout a whole level, dashing past enemies to reach the flagpole as quickly as possible. And sure, the levels are littered with power-ups, coins, and the occasional secret, but by and large, Mario's level design up until this point had been a relatively straightforward reach the finish line and be quick about it. The removal of the timer in Yoshi's Island immediately puts the player at ease. Right off the bat it says, hey, take your time, take in your surroundings, and feel free to spend a little bit longer looking for secrets, because that's right, you're going to be graded on how many secrets you can find. Like, literally graded, like you're at school, on a chalkboard. And what do these secrets unlock, I hear you ask? Bonus levels. That's right, Yoshi's Island was the first in the series to introduce collectibles that were required to unlock extra levels. So now, as well as just getting from A to B, you're also on the lookout for 20 red coins, 30 stars with legs, and 5 flowers in every level. But get this, the stars you collect also act as a health bar of sorts. Instead of immediately dying upon contact with an enemy, this time around, taking a hit sends Baby Mario floating away from Yoshi as he cries helplessly. This then triggers a countdown, and you have as many seconds as you have stars to reunite with Mario. It results in a dynamic that makes the threat of death less of an immediate issue, but it means you have to play a lot more carefully if you want to make it to the end of the level with all 30 stars for the perfect score. It's a good thing then that the Yoshis have a few new abilities up their sleeves. Whilst most of the regular enemies can still be stomped on in the traditional Mario style, it's probably more worth your while to eat them with Yoshi's tongue, and either spit them out or turn them into eggs, which you can use as projectiles. You can carry up to 6 at a time, and they're useful not only in combat, but in solving puzzles, finding secrets, and opening up the path ahead. In addition, Yoshi has the flutter jump too, allowing him to reach pretty far in the air. Throw in the introduction of a ground pound, and all of these innate abilities mean that Yoshi already has a pretty decent set of tools at his disposal right from the start of the game. Gone are the traditional power-ups of old, such as the Fire Flower, Tanuki Suit, or the Cape Feather that would carry across from level to level, and in their place, a series of genuinely very creative pickups and transformations that are much more situational but add to the sense of variety that I mentioned earlier. You can eat watermelons and shoot out the seeds, and of course there are fire and ice versions. And then there are transformations which will briefly turn Yoshi into a slew of different vehicles, including a car, helicopter, a submarine, and a mole tank. It's clear here that Nintendo spared no expense in just throwing whatever idea stuck into Yoshi's Island, and they were no longer limited by the constraints of the traditional Mario formula. There are enemies in the background which will jump into the foreground. There are enemies called fuzzies which, when touched, drastically alter the visuals and the music and make Yoshi go on a brief, psychedelic trip. There are levels in which you explore vast underground mazes that are truly unmatched in terms of scale when compared to the previous games. There's an insane amount of creative ideas at play here. Falling blocks that make you feel like you're stuck inside a game of Tetris, sprawling jungles full of cheeky monkeys and lake monsters, riding a bucket through a river of lava, even traversing miniature planetoids. That's right, Super Mario Galaxy, Yoshi's Island beat you to it by about 12 years. And what's so great about all of this is that the game never relies on one singular idea for too long. It will throw them at you and you'll have a blast, and it will move on to the next one. It keeps every single level feeling genuinely fresh and exciting, and you're consistently left wondering what to expect when you get to the next world. Take the enemies, for example. Super Mario World contains a total of 62 unique types of enemies. That's a pretty decent assortment, but Yoshi's Island contains almost double, with 116 unique enemy types. And it's no different when it comes to boss battles. Previous games would repeat bosses or slightly alter a sprite and call it a different boss, but not so in Yoshi's Island. Here you'll face 12 unique and memorable bosses, with the last being a face-off against an enormous baby Bowser who's coming at you from the horizon. It's a great set piece, and I know I keep mentioning it, but I really cannot stress enough the amount of variety and unique, memorable moments found in Yoshi's Island compared with the rest of the series. If an outstanding art style and numerous design and gameplay innovations weren't enough, then please allow the work of one Mr. Koji Kondo to sway your opinion on this game. The soundtrack of Yoshi's Island, much like its art style, goes so much further than what came before it, with a score that just oozes atmosphere and immersion. Honestly, it excels in all areas, from the upbeat athletic stages and flowery fields, to the ambient caves and dark fortresses. The Super Nintendo brought with it upgrades from the NES and the sound department, housing 8 dedicated sound channels over the predecessor's 5, and it had a sampling system that allowed composers to simulate the sounds of instruments or other sound effects to their heart's content, and this allowed for much more richly layered themes to be composed. All of the music you've heard so far in this video has been from Yoshi's Island, and honestly, for the most part, it does a great job of melding with the upbeat and colourful tone of the game. There are, however, more atmospheric tracks like this cave theme currently playing. And these are great too. The slower pace and more melancholy tone fit right in with the less action-oriented and more mellow stages such as the caverns and labyrinths. And the use of these synthesized tones that make a sort of twinkling sound pair very nicely with the visuals, the crystals and the waterfalls seen in the backdrops of the cave environments. Another musical highlight for me is the map theme. Whilst it starts off with a simple, upbeat and repeating tune, it gradually builds up as you beat each world and progress on your journey to rescue the infant Luigi. Each world's version of the theme adds in an additional instrument, and it acts as an excellent showcase of the sound channels that the Super Nintendo had to play with. By the final rendition of the theme, the music is cheering you on to make it through those last few tricky levels and reunite the Mario Brothers. And I think that is exactly what a great soundtrack should be. Intrinsically linked to the core of what the game is about, and an additional medium to engross the player into the game's world. Although I still maintain that Yoshi's Island itself is underrated and overlooked, the impact that it's had on Nintendo's future is significant. Within the Super Mario series of games, it introduced a number of concepts that would go on to become series staples. These include the introduction of the ground pound, red coins, the first appearance of the recurring character Kamek, and it was the first time that the updated invincibility theme was used. Super Mario 64 is often thought to be the first game to use this version as it's associated with the wing cap, but not so. It was in fact first the powerful infant theme. Despite originally being labelled as the sequel to Super Mario World, Yoshi's Island is now the first in its own trilogy of Yoshi's Island games. Yoshi's Island DS and Yoshi's New Island were released as direct sequels, and there have been many other entries in the Yoshi line of games including Yoshi's Story, Yoshi's Woolly World and Yoshi Touch and Go. Nintendo themselves seem to canonically treat the Yoshi line of games as a separate entity from the Mario series, as highlighted in Super Smash Bros., where Yoshi's emblem is an egg, rather than the mushroom symbol shared by Mario, Luigi, Bowser, and so on. I think ultimately, Yoshi's Island is often kept separate from the rest of the Super Mario Bros. Games, because looking at it now, it's been recontextualized as the beginning of the Yoshi series, rather than a sequel to Super Mario World. But I'd argue that it could be both. The start of a new series, and a sequel. And hopefully, having heard what I've had to say, you'll agree that it deserves another chance to earn its spot amongst Nintendo's greats. Yoshi's Island can be played on the Super Nintendo, Game Boy Advance, Wii U Virtual Console, Super Nintendo Mini, and the Nintendo Switch. So if you're remotely into Mario, platformers, or Nintendo, you absolutely owe it to yourself to experience this game.